Hi, I'm William Malik with a bit of security for September 22nd, 2025. Today we're going to be talking about Agile versus Waterfall development methodologies and their implications for code quality, which of course is directly related to security. When I was at IBM in Poughkeepsie, I took advantage of the Culinary Institute. It was just up the road, and I took some adult education classes there. One of the first things I learned was the concept of mise en place, which means everything in its order. You have to get yourself set up before you begin to cook. You want to have all your ingredients, you want to have all the tools, your utensils you'll need, you want to have the recipe, and you want to have the place where you're going to do the cooking ready, the oven, the stove, what have you. You want to get this organized so that when a decision is made as to what to cook, you know before you begin that you have everything you need. You're familiar with the tools, and you can go ahead and produce whatever it is that you want to make in a repeatable, efficient, high quality manner. Now, think about this when you go to a restaurant. The waiter shows you a list of the things that might be made. You make a selection, and the waiter goes back and explains that to the chef, and the chef then begins preparing the food. You know, before you finish that conversation with the waiter, how much it's going to cost, about how long it's going to take, and what to expect in terms of the quality of the ingredients and the overall effect. I mean, yeah, other things like how does the restaurant feel and such, of course, are good too. Imagine if instead you go into a restaurant and you have a casual conversation with the waiter about how you're feeling and what you might like to have. And then the waiter goes to the chef and has a talk there about what he thinks he heard of your feeling and describes the chef what he had. And then the chef thinks about what he's got and what he might make that would kind of fit what you seem to be wanting, what he's made before that he's good at. Then he starts preparing something. But then while you're sitting there, you see a really nice platter of something gets served to the folks at the next table, and you call the waiter over and say, I think I'd really like something more like that. And then the waiter goes back to the chef and says, yeah, that fellow, he's kind of changed his mind. He thinks he'd like to have it a little more like what the folks at table 13 are getting. Um, and what ends up happening, of course, the chef now has to stop and see, okay, I thought I had the ingredients for this, but in order to do that, and I did just make it, so the stuff has to be around here somewhere. But I think I used a different soup base, different stock. I need a couple of spices. Did I use the last of them? And eventually you will get what you want. In the interest of time, of course, they can't waste effort on things that are ancillary to the creation of your meal. So stuff like, making sure that everybody's hands are washed and that all the tools are clean and that the door on the refrigerator is shut promptly. All that sort of falls by the wayside in the order of preserving efficiency. And you won't know how much it's going to cost until it's over. I'm going to say that that's kind of like Agile. Be very careful about the side effects and consequences when you change the way in which you go about making it is that you're going to make. It takes time to become a good chef. It takes time to not just learn how to use the tools, but to become practice at using them efficiently, how to cut up the onions, right? How to make sure that you have the ingredients saved safely so you can pull something out of the fridge and know that it's going to be good and fresh and at the right temperature, not tainted. Some of the things that we learned through the waterfall method, things like don't write throwaway test cases unless you're creating throwaway code. Things like the primacy of documentation. There's an argument that says Programming is documentation. And in fact, serious agile teams are enormously efficient about generating and maintain current, complete, accurate documentation about what steps they made and what design choices they did. But too many agile development teams follow the spirit of the method without getting into the strict, rigorous details of it. This is a problem, especially now with AI assisted code development and vibe coding and so on. You're going to end up with a situation where you wouldn't be able to say precisely what level of the application was running at the time that a particular user was given a particular piece of advice. Going back from an audit or forensically to determine how it was that we told this client to use this treatment rather than that one, to invest in this business rather than that one, to pay this bill rather than that one. When that's not decidable, when you cast aside change management methodologies and version control procedures, you end up with an environment that is far less certain. If a lawsuit arises because of a bad decision that was advised by a piece of code whose provenance you can't establish, the consequences of that lawsuit will fall on the shoulders of the organization making the decision. Programming is about documentation, just like cooking is about recipes. You can step into a kitchen and whip up something wonderful and inspired, and it might be delicious. But if you don't have documentation, you won't be able to do it again. And if you don't have documentation, you won't be able to go back and say, how could I improve this? What was it that I did precisely that allowed me to come out with this stew or this loaf of bread in a way that allows me to guarantee that my family, my friends, my guests, the patrons in my restaurant will have the same delightful experience next time that they had last time? Creating a program involves refining the documentation, which initially appears as a set of requirements, converting it by a stepwise methodology from those initial requirements to a running program. If those steps aren't carefully documented, how do you know where the errors happened? How do you avoid them from happening again? How do you know you're getting better as a developer? So if you want to do this repeatably, if you want to do it well, if you want to get better at that expertise, take the time to think clearly about your process. Your customers will appreciate it, even as they see something delightful being delivered to the next table. And that's my bit of security for the 22nd of September. I'm William Malik. Be safe.